Now I ain't saying I believe every old story that floats around the Appalachians, but some of 'em got enough teeth in 'em that you don't laugh when the elders speak. This one comes from over on the Virginia side, near a hollow tucked into Clinch Mountain. Folks just called it the Ridge, like that was explanation enough. Picture we're sitting here, fire poppin', crickets loud, woods thick as hair. That's the sort of setting this story deserves. So, back around the 1930s, there was an old logging camp up on the far side of the ridge, where the trees grow tall and tight, and the fog clings low like it's got nowhere else to go. Logging crews come and go season after season, and nobody thought nothing strange of it, until crews started quitting mid-season. Not for lack of work, neither. They'd pack up and walk off without even taking their full pay. Now the boss of that camp was a fella named Harlan McCready. Hard-headed man, tall as a step ladder and twice as stubborn. He'd been a logger his whole life and didn't care much for mountain superstition. But one year he found himself with a problem. Every time he hired up a new crew, they'd last maybe 2-3 weeks. Then one night, someone come pounding on his cabin door, face pale like candle grease, asking for their pay right then and there. They didn't care if it was midnight. They just needed to get down off that mountain. He'd ask him, "What did you see?" And they'd just shake their heads and say, "Ain't staying up here another night, sir." Some refused to go back for their kit, even their blankets, just headed down the ridge with whatever they had on. Word got around the mountain, as it tends to, that there was something up on Clinch. Some folks said catamounts, others said spirits. One old widow swore to God it was a lantern man, which is Appalachian talk for a wandering soul that never got to where it was going. Well, Harlan didn't believe a lick of it, but he did believe in getting to the bottom of a problem. So one cold October night, after losing yet another crew to midnight panic, he hollered at the last two fellas that hadn't fled, Sonny Pike and Luther Griggs. Both local boys, both tough as whipcord. He said, "We're going up to the cut site tonight. Figure this nonsense out. Grab your rifles and lamps." Now you gotta understand, going up the ridge at night ain't something locals do for fun. Those woods get tight and dead quiet after sundown, like the whole mountain is holding its breath. But all three set out, boots crunching leaves, carbide lamps throwing long shaky beams. The moon was out but thinnish, like a fingernail clipping, and the fog was starting to creep through the trees. They walked a good half hour, maybe more, until they reached the cut site. Tools lay scattered around still, saws, axes, wedges, all half buried in leaves from the workers who'd run off. Harlan stood there with his fists on his hips, looking around and grumbling, "Ain't nothing here but trees and fool talk." And right then Luther held up a hand. "Hush," he whispered. "Listen." They did. At first it seemed like nothing. Then, soft as could be, came the sound of brush cracking uphill. Slow steps, one at a time. Not a deer too heavy, not a bear too steady. Sonny swallowed hard. "Reckon that's one o' them catmonts?" Harlan spat. "Catamount my foot. Probably some drunk straying from the next hollow over." But then, right as he said it, this light flickered through the trees. Yellowish, warm like a lantern flame, bobbing slow between the pine trunks. Sonny whispered, "Who's out here carrying a lamp this time o' night?" But none of 'em answered, 'cause the light wasn't acting right. It wasn't steady. It'd flick to the left, then blink out, then show up closer, then drift off like it was feeling its way through the dark. Now at this point most sane men would have backed away real slow and left the mountain to whatever was walking around on it. But Harlan McCready was not most men. He cupped his hands around his mouth and hollered, "Who's there? Show yourself." The light went out, just gone. They stood there, breath fogging, the night holding still. Harlan was just about to grumble something bravado-ish when a second light flared up, this time behind him. Luther jerked around so fast his lamp swung wild. Sonny whispered, "Lord help us." Now the new light wasn't bobbing or floating, it was just there, hanging in the air, and next to it was another, then another. 4 lights, spaced like, well, not like lanterns, more like eyes. Only they weren't moving, just watching. That's when Sonny's nerve broke. He muttered, "No job's worth this," dropped his lamp, and tore off running down the ridge. Harlan and Luther didn't chase him, just listened to his crashing steps until the woods swallowed the sound. Then Luther whispered, "We best go too, boss." But Harlan shook his head stubbornly and marched toward the lights. He took maybe 3 steps before they blinked out. same as the first one. Dark swallowed the woods again. Harlan cursed under his breath, turned back to Luther and said, "Well, that's that. Nothing but..." But before he could finish, that first wandering light flared up again, right next to him this time. So close Luther swore he could smell hot oil and old metal. It bobbed slow, like something invisible was carrying it, then drifted past Harlan, heading down toward the cut logs. Harlan stood stock still, breath shallow, watching it float without any footsteps, without any sound at all. Just that light, swinging, gentle. After a moment, Luther managed to choke out, "Boss, let's go." This time Harlan didn't argue. They backed away, lamps shakier than the hands holding him, and once they broke the line of pines they ran, grown men in heavy boots, sliding and stumbling all the way down the ridge. By the time they reached the cabins, Sonny was already throwing his things into a sack. Wouldn't even look up. Far as anyone knows, all three left that mountain before sunrise, and that logging camp never opened again. Tools rusted where they lay, boards rotted, roofs caved in, nature took it back. Now here's where the story twists. Years later, long after Harlan died of old age in Tennessee, a survey crew went up that same side of Clinch Mountain. They weren't looking for ghosts or lights, just trying to map timber lines. One of them found something off a game trail, an old Civil War lantern, rusted near to pieces, and beside it was a cracked brass nameplate from a Union regiment known to have gotten lost and scattered up in those mountains back in 1864. 2 men from that regiment were never accounted for. Now I ain't saying that proves anything. Mountains keep secrets tighter than coffins, but ever since, folk around Clinch say that when the fog sits low and the moon's thin, you can see a lone yellow lantern wandering the ridge, trying to find a way off that mountain, trying to get home. And nobody who's seen it has stayed up there after dark, not once, not even logger men with good pay on the line. Now, that'd be enough to quit the mountain for most folks. Old story, old lantern, old ghosts. Wrap it up and tell it on Halloween. But the mountains don't leave good stories alone. They sprout new branches, take root in new people. Fast forward near about 100 years. There was this kid named Eli Porter, local boy, but young, maybe 22. Worked at the co-op, hunted on weekends, didn't believe in much beyond what he could see or touch. He'd heard the story about the lantern man same as everybody else, but he laughed it off the way outsiders laugh at holler tales. Said if ghosts were real, they'd at least have the decency to show up on camera. So one autumn, right when the leaves were fire orange and the nights were getting thin and cold, Eli decided he was gonna hike up Clinch Mountain for a night, just him, a tent, and a GoPro. Said he wanted content. Said he'd prove once and for all that the lantern legend was just old folks making thunder out of rain. His mama told him not to, which is about as close to scripture as it gets up here, but Eli just winked and said he'd be back before tomorrow's biscuits. He hiked up past noon, reached the ridgeline before the sun dipped, pitched his tent near a line of old pines. Fog had already started creeping in, which is early for that time of day. Should have been his first warning, but Eli just filmed it on his phone, calling it premium atmosphere. Now after dark, the mountains get quiet. Not peaceful quiet, empty quiet, like sound don't want to stick around. It was that kind of quiet when Eli unzipped his tent around midnight to take a leak. Moon was thin as thread, stars hiding behind a blanket of cloud. And that's when he saw it. Down slope from his camp, maybe 30 yards off, was a little yellow light, faint, unsteady. Not a flashlight, no lead sharpness. This was warmer, older, like candle flame trapped in glass. Eli froze up a second, trying to logic his way through it. Another hiker, he muttered. Or a hunter. But hunters don't lamp around that late, and hikers don't wander with lanterns. He pulled out his GoPro, started filming, whispering like he was on one of them ghost hunt shows, and the light it started moving. Not straight, neither. It'd drift left behind a tree, vanish, pop back up higher on the ridge, then lower like it was looking for something. Eli whispered, "Hey, you okay down there?" Real polite-like, as though politeness could keep him safe. The light paused, suspended, just still in the dark. Then it faced him. Now I know that don't make sense 'cause lanterns don't have direction. But he said later, when that light turned toward him, he felt it see him, like something behind it had eyes. Next thing, he heard brush crack underfoot. Slow, heavy. Not a deer, not a bear. Footsteps. Eli backed into camp so fast he tripped over his own tent lines. He sat there tangled up, panting, cam still rolling, whispering nope, 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 like a prayer. The footsteps stopped right at the edge of the tree line. He lifted the GoPro just enough to see nothing, just black woods. No light, no lantern, no person. He swallowed hard, zipped up the tent, fumbled for his rifle. The boy wasn't stupid, at least, and sat there with the barrel aimed at the entrance, waiting for something to scratch at the nylon. But nothing did. No sound at all. Eventually he got tired of feeling foolish and unzipped the flap just to peek. And that's when he realized something was wrong with the woods. See, Appalachian night ain't pitch black. Even clouded, even moonless, there's layers of dark tree shapes, sky, ground, distance. Eli didn't see layers. He saw void, like the forest had been swallowed whole. His breath fogged in the air, though it wasn't cold enough for that. And even worse, his tent cast no shadow. His hand cast no shadow, like light itself didn't know where to land anymore. Then, a single tap, like glass touched by a fingernail. He jerked the camera toward the sound, and there, 6 feet from his tent entrance, hanging at eye level, was the lantern. No hand, no arm, no body, just a rusted Civil War-era lantern with a shivering yellow flame inside, floating still as a church mourner. Eli said later the worst part wasn't seeing it, it was the label on it. Little brass nameplate wired to the handle. He couldn't read the name because the lantern kept, well, shimmering. Not flickering like fire, shimmering like heat off asphalt, distorting what was behind it. He tried to speak, to yell, to run, but he said his voice just didn't work. It came out like breath without words. The lantern drifted closer, real slow, light washing pale across his boots, his tent, his shaking hands. And right when it was close enough for him to reach out and touch, he heard a voice. Not in his head, not echoing, just normal, like somebody talking over his shoulder. Only it wasn't speaking English. It sounded like an old soldier reading orders low and tired, as though the words hurt to carry. Eli bolted. Didn't grab his gear, his tent, his pack, just turned and ran down the mountain barefoot, crashing through brush and briar, cutting his feet raw on stone. He didn't slow until he saw porch lights from the nearest trailer on the frontage road. They found him curled up by the propane tank, white as dog bone, feet torn, still clutching that GoPro. Wouldn't speak for an hour, wouldn't go back for his stuff for a month. When they finally did, his mama, his uncle, 2 deputies, they found his tent collapsed, his stove overturned, and his flashlight still running. But the weirdest part? The lantern was gone. Except the nameplate wasn't. They found it in the dirt right where he said it floated, brass, cracked down the center, stamped with a name and unit number from the Union Army, dated 1864. Now you can go up Clinch Mountain today if you're fool enough, but folks will warn you just the same. When the fog hangs early, when the woods fall silent, and when a yellow light wanders through the trees, don't answer it. As 'cause some souls ain't looking to scare you, they're looking to take you the rest of the way home.